For 20 minutes, Kay lingered in the dark, silent and unseen, watching his wife glide across the gleaming ballroom floor. Her steps were flawless and hypnotic, timed so exactly that when the clock told midnight, she found herself at the far edge of the room, encircled by a select cluster of wealthy, self-important admirers. She no longer resembled a woman so much as a prized object on display, handled, admired, and passed around. Hands stayed too long, kisses came too readily, and laughter boomed too loudly as executives from his firm crowded around her. His boss, a man bred into privilege who wore his inheritance like an undeserved medal, paid Whitney a kind of attention that cut deep. This wasn't a single lapse. For 2 consecutive years, the company's New Year's gala had unfolded in the same humiliating way. The first-year call had excused it as the heady effect of champagne and celebration. The next year left no ambiguity. He could no longer pretend. Tonight, though, he was ready. A soft tug at his sleeve pulled him away from his thoughts. He turned to see Rebecca at his side. As Whitney's closest confidant, Rebecca was a regular in their circles, a woman whose aristocratic manner always carried a trace of haughty superiority. But tonight something had shifted. Her usual assurance was gone, replaced by discomfort and a flicker of pity. "Happy New Year, Kyle," she said in a thin voice, leaning forward to place a polite kiss on his cheek. He barely acknowledged it, stepping back to meet her eyes. "Kyle, don't be so grave," she murmured, almost pleading. "It's tradition. Just a few harmless kisses. She'll come back soon, and everything will be okay. You know she loves you." Kyle's mouth twisted into a bitter smile. "Is that so?" he asked coolly. "Was that the same thing under the mistletoe at the Christmas party? Because I distinctly remember her kissing every senior executive in the office." His tone hardened. "And now here she is again, dancing, kissing, cozying up to my colleagues. By your logic, the more she throws herself at them, the more she values me." Rebecca flinched, but forced herself to stay composed. "Kyle, you're misunderstanding. Am I?" he cut in sharply. "Does her affection include making out with George, the man she knows I loathe, or is that merely another exuberant display of love?" Rebecca's cheeks burned, and her gaze fell to the floor. "Kyle, please," she whispered. "I know this is difficult, but Rebecca, I finally understand," he said calmly, but without mercy. Before she could answer, he strode with intention toward their table. From his briefcase, he pulled a large, brightly wrapped present. Removing his wedding ring, he fastened it to the ribbon around the package. Turning back to Rebecca, his face was steady. "Give this to Whitney when she finishes entertaining her guests. Tell her Happy New Year from me. I hope 2025 gives her everything she truly deserves." "Kyle, wait." Rebecca grabbed his arm, urgency threading her voice. "Don't go. I'll bring her back. She's had too much champagne. She needs you to take her home." "No, Rebecca," he replied, calm and almost serene. "She doesn't need me. She has her admirers, her own room, her own car. She's made her choices." He fixed her with a steady look. "And you? You knew all along, didn't you? You lied to me before, but not this time." Without waiting for a response, he turned and walked away. As he left the ballroom, he gave a brief nod to Helen, the HR director, who stood beside her imposing husband. Helen had spent the afternoon helping him assemble the files he had quietly gathered, proof of Whitney's indiscretions. Proof the board would soon see. Inside the crowd, Rebecca pushed her way through until she reached Whitney, who was soaking in the attention of her admirers, and thrust the gift into her hands. Her voice trembled. "Kyle left this for you," she said tightly. "He saw everything tonight. When you started kissing everyone, he decided he'd had enough. He wanted you to have this. He's gone." Whitney's confident smile didn't even flicker. "Oh, Kyle," she said with a dismissive laugh. "He's sulking. He always forgives me. Even when he's mad, he leaves me gifts." Ignoring Rebecca's panic, Whitney untied the ribbon. When the ring slipped free and hit the floor, her smile faltered. George bent, scoffing as he picked it up, his smirk insolent. "Isn't this your husband's wedding ring?" he taunted, holding it aloft. Whitney stared, confusion clouding her expression. With shaky fingers, she ripped open the wrapping. "It's heavy," she muttered, shaking the box as if the answer lay inside. Time stretched as the meaning of the gift began to settle in. The seal broke and papers tumbled onto the polished tiles, glossy photographs spilling like leaves in a wind. A sudden hush fell over the room, dense and heavy. Whitney, her satin gown pooling about her, knelt trembling as she tried to gather the scattered images. Her manicured hand hesitated when the faces in the photos came into focus. A stifled gasp escaped, then erupted into a scream that reverberated through the ballroom. Rebecca, pale and shaken, crouched to help, panic fluttering behind her composure. George stooped to pick up a photograph. Recognition darkened his face like a blow. He snapped, furious, and his voice cut through the murmurs. "What the hell, Whitney?" he snarled, loud enough for the crowd to turn. Curious eyes found the photos on the floor and then widened as the damning scenes became clear. The pictures showed Whitney entangled with George and others. Whispers rose and sharpened into accusations. The tension in the room fractured like glass. A woman's slap cracked against her husband's cheek, sharp and echoing. "So this is why you're never home," she spat, thrusting a finger into his chest and snatching up photos. Holding them high, she turned to the other women. "You need to see these. Plenty of familiar faces here." What had been an elegant night descended into chaos. Names were hurled like knives. Whitney's composure broke. She fainted and collapsed against George's polished shoe. Rebecca frantically called her name, trying to revive her as panic swelled around them. Amid the uproar, Kyle stood near the ballroom's edge, watching for a moment before turning to leave, his face unreadable. He didn't look back. A woman's voice pierced the tumult. She stood center floor holding a small device aloft. "USBs," she announced, waving it as if it were evidence. "Who knows what secrets these hold?" Her words unleashed another wave of commotion. A furious blonde stormed toward an impeccably dressed older man, her voice trembling with rage. "You lowlife, remember our prenup. I'll make sure you lose everything." The man pleaded, desperate. "Please, baby, I'm sorry. It meant nothing." She kept throwing herself at me. "It was just once." The blonde scoffed, fury rising. "Just once? She's not even close to me." Then, with a wild animal scream, she lunged forward, waving the damning photos. The man stumbled back, fear flashing in his eyes before he bolted. Her heels clattered against the tiles as she chased, hurling curses with each step. Across the ballroom, a woman collapsed to her knees, clutching a picture to her chest as sobs tore from her throat. Her husband stood motionless beside her, his head buried in his palms. On the other side of the room, a man shoved a photo into a glamorous woman's hands, his voice trembling. "You lied. You said no to a threesome because you'd never be with another woman." Her face flamed red, shame and anger tangling together. Without a word, she spun and fled, stumbling as her dignity unraveled. Through the chaos, another woman stormed the crowd, a stack of photos clutched tight. She stopped before a bewildered guest, thrusting one into her palm. The realization that spread across the woman's face was chilling. Her features hardened to stone as she turned on her husband, photo raised like a weapon. He instinctively stepped back, but she advanced, fury in every stride. The ballroom had dissolved into a battlefield of betrayal. Shouts, sobs, and accusations tore through the air, a dissonant chorus of heartbreak. On the floor, Whitney stirred, slowly regaining consciousness. Dazed, she blinked at the wreckage around her. A man in a flawless tuxedo crouched at her side, his voice calm but edged with authority. "Are you all right?" he asked. Her words were faint, nearly hollow. "I'm Whitney Wright." His brows knit. "The Whitney Wright?" She gave a weak nod. "Who are you?" From his jacket, he drew a packet of papers. Snapping her photo with chilling precision, he said, "I'm a process server." "You've been served, Mrs. Wright." The crowd froze, silence rippling outward. Rising, his voice sliced through the tension. These filings support Kyle Wright's adultery claims in his divorce petition. Photos, videos, proof of her affairs. For those who missed tonight's display, the public record lists every name, date, and location. For a modest fee, I'll provide a link to the full archive. Digital packages also available. With a sweeping bow, he exited, leaving shock in his wake. The fallout struck fast. Whitney collapsed into Rebecca's arms, sobbing into the papers that sealed her downfall. Once admired and envied, she was now scorned and pitted. Her disgrace suffocated her. Elsewhere, George Taylor barked at his staff. "Collect those photos. Burn them." He turned to Helen, his tone venomous. "Draft Kyle Wright's termination. Monday morning." Helen, unshaken, replied smoothly. "That won't be necessary, Mr. Taylor. Kyle resigned today. Desk cleared. 2 weeks' notice submitted." George's face twisted with rage. "Then I'll blacklist him." Helen's voice stayed even. "That won't work. The chairman, your father, accepted his resignation. Kyle already signed with the consulting partner." George's complexion darkened as Helen shared a quiet, victorious glance with her husband. The tyrant had fallen. Far away, Kyle Wright cruised south in a Chevrolet Suburban, the city shrinking in the rearview. Rolling fields and country roads stretched out before him, offering a freedom he hadn't felt in years. The divorce had been clean. Whitney kept the penthouse and trust fund. Kyle retained his investments, retirement accounts, and the SUV she had insisted on buying. A small but satisfying win. As the miles slipped past, he thought of Taylor and Son, the company he'd built but George would surely ruin. His smirk hinted at satisfaction. His new venture, crafted from ideas he'd been quietly developing, promised far more. In New York, Whitney unraveled at Rebecca's apartment. Tears soaked her hands as flimsy excuses dissolved into nothing. She had planned to tell Kyle her affairs were strategic, but even she no longer believed it. Her life was collapsing piece by piece. In their stripped-down flat, she sank to the floor, her sobs echoing off the walls. Kyle's departure had been meticulous. He set up a new phone, discarding the old SIM in a slushy street, a symbolic cut from his past. From the new device, he fired off emails like bombs. Each one exposed an affair, wrecked a reputation, or pulled a buried secret into the light. The last email went to Rebecca's husband, Al. Inside were 5 damning video clips and an audio file of Rebecca and Whitney mocking their clueless partners. Enraged, Al forwarded the evidence to every betrayed spouse mentioned, igniting a chain reaction. Rebecca, expelled from her home, was now crammed into a shabby apartment with Whitney, both women forced to choke on the fallout of their choices. Their glamorous lives reduced to rubble. George, too, faced ruin. His father cut him off, stripped his inheritance, and removed him from the firm. The scandal gutted the company's leadership, paving the way for Helen, newly appointed VP, to rebuild with global talent. Meanwhile, Kyle's new life in Texas bloomed. He drove past Lady Bird Lake and into downtown Austin, arriving at a luxury high-rise provided by his employer. 6 months' rent paid in advance gave him time to find a permanent home, one with a yard, trees, and space for the dog he planned to adopt. At his welcome barbecue, he was introduced as newly divorced, with plenty of chances to meet someone genuine. For the first time in years, Kyle felt hope, a future built on loyalty, not betrayal. Back in New York, the fire he sparked still burned. Betrayed spouses unveiled fresh secrets, escalating the storm. Helen kept Kyle updated, each message carrying a note of satisfaction. Reflecting on the chaos he had left behind, Kyle felt the weight of his past lift. In its place came freedom, peace, and the promise of a brighter tomorrow. For the first time in years, Kyle felt truly alive.